Nicole was fighting a valiant fight to stay in the game. Marcella Shell Gas was booming. They found a way to get it out of the ground fairly cheap. And, but the shop really was TMI closing. But because of how much excess power we had on the grid, I was convinced we're going to be fine. Because the amount of megawatts we had, and I think like in 2020, we had 18,000 megawatts above the safety valve. And as a commissioner, or working at a commission, looking at that, 18,000 megawatts. Customers are paying for that, whether it's needed or not. So I never wanted to see that. We need to keep a balance with a conservative amount above it, just for safety, but 18 was too much. So TMI closed, some of the coal plants closed, but I thought, okay, we're gonna be fine. We started seeing, or at least it felt like we were seeing a lot more frequent and stronger storms. And so our focus at the commission was work with the distribution companies to make sure that their infrastructure was resilient, could bounce back from these storms quickly. And there still continues to be, and there was back then, the debate about what's all this renewable energy coming onto the grid. How reliable will it be? Once again, we had that great cushion with extra capacity, not worried. We had time. So by 2020 in PJM, there is some more load growth, and we noticed because of the type of generation at that point that was interconnecting into the grid. And so every year we lose some power plants, but we gain some new capacity. And at that point there was a lot of solar coming on. And these are smaller installations. PJM's interconnection grid for connecting power to the grid was designed to put big coal plants on, big natural gas, big nuclear, not all these little installations. And that interconnection queue started grinding to a halt because the engineers at PJM have to do studies. A power provider drops out, says they're not going ahead with their plans. Somebody else comes in, restudy, and that just grinded things to a halt. And so we were working through, okay, what can we do to, influence what's going on there? Then in 2021, Winter Storm Uri happened out west, Texas, the Southwest Power Pool. 290 people died during that winter storm because the grid went down out there. And people were out of power for weeks. And even with that, it was all about lessons learned. We studied that whole storm and the response to it and started thinking about things to dishearten our infrastructure. Same time, we're in post-COVID inflation. We still got this aging workforce that's an agents inside out into this field. There's more cyber threats. There's more physical threats to the grid. We're starting to see some electrification coming on, electric vehicles, heat pumps, and I'm not talking just Pennsylvania. We're in, after COVID, the supply chains for all of the equipment that goes into power production and distribution, it's really slow and really expensive. So, but we were still doing okay. We're doing okay. And sitting in Pennsylvania, one of the reasons why I think I've always been really confident about like future of resource advocacy is, like I said, we export 25% of what we produce every year. And our ace in the hole is Marcellus Shale. We sit on top of a boatload of natural gas. And let's see, PJM. I told you we've got 45,000 megawatts, right? Just Pennsylvania. 25,000 of that is natural gas. 8,900 megawatts is nuclear. 6,000 is coal. 2,100 is hydropower. And 2,200 is oil. And we've only got 700 megawatts of renewables. So this is what I like to call an all of the above generation fleet. And I am a big fan of an all of the above generation fleet. It was some years ago when Marcellus Shale started coming up that I remember folks at PJM saying, oh, we can go to, as a region, we can go to 85% natural gas. And I am not an engineer, but I also remember thinking at that time, I love natural gas, but that's a bad idea. Relying on any one resource to that extent is asking for trouble. And I'll explain further why that is. So, so that's 2021, right? So then we get to 2022. And 2022 was Christmas weekend of 2022. Winter Storm Elliott hit this region, hit Pennsylvania. And it didn't just hit Pennsylvania. It stretched from most of the eastern interconnect, and so like just draw a line down the middle of the country, and it came east, all the way east. I don't know if many people know how close we came to blackout, brownouts that weekend. That was huge. I have never been so nervous in my life. And I wasn't a commissioner then, I was working for a commissioner. But I woke up, it was it was Christmas weekend, it was a Saturday morning, and I'm flipping channels, and I just happened to see that there were brownouts down in Tennessee, TPA. And so then I start looking around, because like, we're just not used to having brownouts often. And TPA also not down there. And realized, oh God, this weather is, we knew that there was weather coming. We did not, I don't know that any of the grid operators realized exactly how things were going to go down. So it was a bomb cyclone, the temperature dropped like a rock, and our one saving grace was that it was a holiday weekend, so a lot of businesses and manufacturing weren't up and running. But because of the amount of power plant outages that we had, and here's the things that happened. Coal piles froze. It got that cold that quick. Natural gas compressors also froze. And at one point in the PJM footprint, that 14-state footprint, we lost 47,000 megawatts power. 47. That is the entire output of Pennsylvania. And it wasn't all in Pennsylvania, thank God. But to lose 47,000 in dispatches at one time, that quickly, it's a miracle that the light stayed on. In doing the after-action reports and everything, one thing I heard from PJM that always stuck with me was, I told you we have hydropower as part of our resource mix. The way those power facilities work is basically you kind of, it uses electricity. It pushes water up a hill, basically, and then it comes down and it turns a turbine, right? When things were really, really bad, they could not spare the energy to push the water up the hill at one hydro facility. Couldn't do it. That's how close it came. So we got through it. We got through Elliott, but that was a wake-up call, and that's when I realized it doesn't matter that we're sitting on top of Marcellus Shale. It does not matter that we export 25% of what we produce. If you are part of an interconnected grid, the way electrons flow is if parts of the grid start going down, it will cascade, right? So, wasn't much longer after we got through studying Elliott and figuring out, okay, there's a lot of things that we need to do better. Emergency management, the flow of information between PJM, the distribution companies, the transmission companies, the power plants, the governor's office, PEMA, all these things, we were able to really fine tune that because there was a lot of scrambling that weekend, and that was a good learning lesson. But no sooner as we're coming through that, I start hearing, like everywhere I turn, every conference I go to, all of a sudden everybody's talking about data centers. Data centers are coming, data centers are coming. Are y'all paying attention to this? Now, we have always had data centers in the state and in the region. They've just been smaller. They're a lot smaller. But they are, and those small ones are still out there, but the scale of the data centers that are being built and being planned for is the new thing. So, with this increased load that we're seeing, and just to put that in perspective, some of the existing data centers, they're like fully built out, maybe 100 megawatts, maybe 50 megawatts. That's what we were used to working with. And then we hear that the planned ones are going to be 1,000 megawatts. The city of Pittsburgh is, I think they're about 1,000 megawatts. And they took 100 years to get up to 1,000 megawatts. For data centers, thankfully, they don't just come on full scale at 1,000 megawatts. They will scale up over time. But the way they scale up is 100 megawatts, or if they're really ambitious, 200. But it's still quite a lot at one time. And as they're announcing, as they're acquiring land, as they're inking deals, PJM, of course, has to plan for this growth that's coming. Everything in PJM in that market works based off of forecasts. That's how they know how much power is going to be running through a particular line in a particular year, whether there's enough transmission capacity, whether they need to build more transmission capacity, and so they're like the air traffic controllers for the flow of electricity in the region. But at the same time, they run the competitive market where the power producers offer into the market, and the customers, whether it is PPL's residential residential customers or a data center. They match the power and the need and set prices based on that by having competitive auctions. So back in 2021, when there was that glut of power, the prices that were coming in from those auctions, because of supply and demand and because we had too much supply, were really, really depressed. Wonderful thing as a commissioner, if I can say, hey, power prices are pretty good this year for customers. But with those low power prices, the folks that go out and develop power plants, they just didn't see enough of a future for them to actually start breaking the bill. So we got caught it was a bit of a perfect storm. Low capacity prices, some old plants coming offline because it was not worth the money to put into some of them to keep them going. Marcellus shale gas was cheap, and the gas plants, the new gas plants, were eating coal's lunch. And so, between those plants aging out, between some environmental regulations, between the cheap gas, and the power prices that we've been seeing at PJM, we were not building enough at the time. We needed to build enough to get ahead of where we are today. But in everyone's defense in the industry, I do not know that anyone knew where we were going to be today, because we have never seen this kind of growth ever. So, like I said, PJM bases everything on forecasts, and they hold these auctions. So I want to say in the 2021 time frame, I think we were getting $45 per megawatt, $45 per megawatt capacity prices. And all capacity is a promise by a power plant that they will be up and running 3 years forward and actually able to inject power into the grid. That's in a wholesale price for power. Capacity usually is actually a fairly small part, but the signal that it sends is everything for the way that the market works. The bigger part of a wholesale price is actually energy. It's like the day-to-day price that moves with supply, with demand. The energy component of the wholesale price historically also had been low because of Marcellus shale. So we went from $45 a megawatt day capacity to the 2025-2026 auction. It increased 900%. Went to $269 per megawatt day. And that is because at that point, PJM got a pretty good forecast and really saw, oh, these data centers are really coming. They're really coming. And the price went up so that auction was held in the summer of 24. Some other little wrinkles as to why we weren't technically doing 3-year forwards at that point that I won't bore you with. But so the 2025 auction, $269 a megawatt day. Very next auction for the 2026, 2027 delivery year, $329 per megawatt day. The very last auction we had for the 2027, 28 delivery year, $333 per megawatt day. And like I said, This is just capacity. This is just a portion of that wholesale bill. Still got transmission to pay for, still got energy to pay for. And the way that PJM's capacity market is structured, the real cap on the price is actually like $530 per megawatt day. Because of all this low growth, because of the lack, because of the interconnection queue being stalled out and worked on, because nobody was really building, Governor Shapiro did realize that, hey, this is gonna hit our ratepayers like a ton of bricks. So he filed a complaint with FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and said, the $530 megawatt day cap doesn't make sense in this time. The reason it doesn't make sense is because it'd be okay to let the competitive market work if it was delivering, if it was able to deliver. But right now, there's no way that they can deliver that 3-year product. So we need to cap this price while the market catches up. So the price was capped at that $330 per megawatt day. That price collar, that cap is going to be in place for, I believe it is 2 more auctions. I might be wrong, might be 1. And it's saving us some money. So as bad as it could be a lot worse. $330 per megawatt day is bad. It's really bad. It could be worse. And I hate even saying that it could be worse, because I recognize how bad 330 is. The last option that resulted in that 330, not only did we get the high price, remember how I was telling you back in 2020, we were procuring like 18,000 gigawatt above where we were supposed to be. We came in 6 gigawatts below where we were supposed to be. Y'all should see your faces. Like, Jesus, does this story get any better?
I didn't understand that.
So the region has a lot of work to do. We do have a lot of work to do. Data center demand in PJM, they're forecasting 32 gigawatts of additional demand if these sensors got built, if by 2030. That's 4 years from now.
Additional 32.
No, so total, that would be what is online in PJM and everything like the 4 years of plan. 32 gigawatts. So
you're talking about megawatts this whole time.
I'm sorry.
So what is that?
Okay, so 1,000 megawatts is 1 gigawatt. And I hope when I was telling you that back in 2020 when we had that glut of energy, I hope I didn't say megawatts. We had 18 gigawatts above. So
What was the total then? You said we had 18 above.
above the requirement that PJM sets for itself. They have, their installed capacity is 189 gigawatts. I think the reliability requirement is somewhere like in the 150 gigawatt.
So now we're looking at double that when you're saying 320. Okay.
No, 32
32.
gigawatts.
Okay.
She started with 1,000 megawatts.
Multiply that
That was
1,000.
1 gigawatt,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so 32,000 megawatts, 32 gigawatts
By year 20.
by 2030. Right. 3 Mile Island is, before the meltdown in '79, it had 2 units running, and it was about 2 gigawatts. After the 1 unit melted down, they operated with just the 1 unit, so about 1 gigawatt, and I'm actually rounding up. So, and that's one of the reasons why they ended up closing back in 2019, is because the way a nuclear power plant works is they have to power down one of the units every couple of years, refuel, et cetera. And CMI, with only the 1 unit, whenever they had to do that, they were completely offline, so they weren't earning any money, right? So that's why they shut down, and then there's plenty of Marcellus shale gas going. So TMI, just for scale, 1 gigawatt of power comes out of that 1 unit. Remember I told you some of these large data centers draw 1 gigawatt of power. Right? So that's the scale we're talking about. As I said, they don't just plop down at 1 gigawatt. Thank God they ramp up over the years. Is all this data center load going to show up? Some of it will, and there's enough plan that some amount is moving markets, it's moving our electricity prices, and I'm a little bit of a nerd, so bear with me. So there's this principle in economics called Jevons paradox. So when efficiencies occur in production, usually more of a resource is going to be used than less, even though something's gaining efficiency. So think about coal back in the 1800s, right? Technology moved along. They figured out how to get more power from coal-burning steam engines. They became much more efficient, and that resulted in cheaper steam engine power, which resulted in it being used a lot more for a lot more purposes, right? So when you think about data centers, all they are is big warehouses full of CPUs, of just computers. And I know we often read, the computer industry that they've come up with the latest and greatest new computer chip, which is that much faster, that much cheaper. And every time that happens, you would expect, okay, maybe they won't need to draw as much power because they're so much more efficient. But it's the same problem, not problem, but the same way that the coal steam engine developed, is that you become more efficient, you become cheaper, and the world finds a way to use more of you. And that's what's going on with data centers. Think about how far the years have come just in your lifetime and how ubiquitous they are right now. We can't look away from these things. We're all used to using GPS. We're all used to our entertainment, being able to stream it on demand. Lord knows our Defense Department relies on AI. Everyone relies on AI. I think the average American is online maybe 5 hours a day, 5-7 hours a day. I believe that just in that time frame, you touch a data center 40 times, just in that day. So, it's gonna keep growing, it's gonna keep growing. How do we meet this moment? I'm the biggest environmentalist in the world. But we got bill generation, we got a bill transmission. What I can do in my job, because I can't demand that, I can't tell anyone to bill generation, I don't have that power. All I can do is try to design electricity rates for end users that will maybe shift some of their usage to off-peak hours, because that we can control. These data centers, they run 24/7, they don't tend to have peaks. My normal large load manufacturers, et cetera, even though some of them run 24/7, they do have more of a peaky kind of usage. These data centers are different. They are different. So, what I'm hearing recently, when they first came in and started talking to anyone that was listening, they would not even, we would always ask them, you know, can you shift some of your usage off peak to allow the rest of the world to catch up? And they would say no. I'm hearing differently now. So I think, you know, reality is starting to sink in. And and that's why it's so important that, like, you guys have this information, that legislators have this information, so that before anybody goes and, you know, grants these data centers the right to build in their community, that they make some demands of them, right? They need to be smarter about their usage. 24/7, all the time, not expecting to be interrupted is unreasonable. It is completely unreasonable. I know that the world depends on these data centers, but I don't want to see a residential customer or a small business, a hospital, what have you. I don't want to see anybody's reliability be jeopardized for what at the end of the day are multi-billion-dollar, very deep-pocketed businesses. So it is not too much to ask them to be good citizens. It really isn't. They have the money. God knows they have the money. So what we're doing at the commission is we're working on revising our interconnection regulations. And the reason I think that's really important, like I said, is we need every megawatt of generation that's out there of any kind to come onto the grid as fast as possible. So anything we can do to try to streamline our processes for how, because some generation does connect at the distribution level. So anything we can do to set out, that's what we're doing. And like I said, some of the new design that we're doing to move some customers off peak if we can, and large load tariff. And that really is just about rate design, so that however it is that they use the distribution grid and also a small part of the transmission grid, whose rates are set by FERC, not by me, but that their use of like PPLs or Duquesne's or First Energy Company's infrastructure, that none of that cost gets passed on to the other rate classes. And you'd be surprised, they're actually like cost allocation for rates is I wish it was a science, but it was a system that was set up like in 1920. So we're still trying to make it more of a science. But what we're looking at with the large load tariff is from the gate, from the outset, to make sure that no one else is picking up any of their costs when it comes to distribution grid. So, what I ask of you all and the roles that you play is, as they come into your communities, as they start asking for land use permits, maybe zoning changes, etc. Just make sure they're transparent, make sure that they're not hiding things from you. Ask them, hey, you're saying you're coming in for like 100 megawatts, fully built out. Where are you going to be? What's it going to be? What kind of water usage should we expect to see from your facility once it's along the way, right? Because a lot of the state has been in drought for the past few years at least, and we use water to cool these warehouses. So, stay in touch with municipalities, stay in touch with the local elected officials, and also make sure that whatever part they play in all of this, that they're not just giving away the farm, please. That's it for, unless you guys have questions.
So, thank you very much. I know we do have questions throughout the room here. You already answered one of my questions. One of my questions was going to be, do you believe the PUC will reach a time where you'll cap or put a threshold on the amount of electricity that's going to be utilized by a data center?
I wish I had that power. I do not have that power. Because we are a deregulated state, right? The only limits I can put is the rates that they will pay, depending on what kind of interconnection they need to do with the local distribution company, how fast that goes, what that looks like, what that process looks like. But I don't have the jurisdiction to say we can only allow in, a couple of gig. I don't have that now.
You don't have that authority?
I just don't have. I don't have that.
Okay.
If we still have jurisdiction over power plants,
Yeah.
I could, but we do not. So, what we are doing is the commissions from the 14 states and PJM. We made a filing with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Well, no, it hasn't gone to FERC yet. It's with PJM, and what we are asking PJM to do is for these large loads to do we ask them to treat them differently from other customers. If there's an imbalance, if there's a shortfall, and there is, so we're short 6 gigawatts, right, this last auction. If the generation is not coming online fast enough, if we ever get to the point where we're in a crisis, the way we were with Elliott, then they're the ones that get cut, right? So that is work in progress right now. And yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll take some questions here. I saw, I'll tell you what, can you see everybody? Do you want them to stand?
No.
So you can see them? Okay.
Just
Go ahead, Kimberly.
like 2 one-word answers is what I'm looking for. How many acres is required for a data center, and how much water per day will that data center use?
I can't answer either one of those questions.
Okay.
But I can get back to you on that. And it really, like, think about it, it's gonna depend on the size, right? I drove down to Georgia last summer. And once you see one of these facilities, like, you'll keep seeing them. There are these huge warehouses, they're brand spanking new. And we're used to seeing, like, when you're driving down highway or secondary roads, seeing big warehouses, but they always have truck bays, right? No truck bays, no windows, just out in a newly developed development.
Isolated along,
Yeah.
Interstate 95.
Yeah,
So
so
that's where you see them when you're traveling south of
I went down,
the other way.
yeah, or inland,
Okay.
but they're everywhere.
Yeah, that's, yeah. So, Stacy.
Great presentation. Wow, you walked us through it. Thanks. I'm actually coming at it from a land use point of view. You talked about the electric interconnection process, about the need to build out capacity. And to me, that says, ooh, we've got a lot of transmission lines to be built. And that means there's a lot of eminent domain on the part of the major utilities. I saw a map 20 years ago that just showed PPLs, which is in central PA. And it was massive how much eminent domain capacity they had with all their interconnections. So just from that aspect alone, forget the data centers, what do you think this is going to look like? And I have a suggestion.
What I would like to see happen, I know there's there is legislation. So I do believe, I can't think of which legislator authored the legislation that would do like a reset zoning board. The problem right now is there's not one entity just looking at the whole map of Pennsylvania and saying, this is the most efficient way to build out this system. And I understand why it has happened that way. I understand that municipalities are very, very territorial and parochial about where things go. But unless somebody says just says no, like no to the data centers, and I don't hear anyone saying no. All the states are giving them tax incentives to come in because they want the tax base. Although, frankly, a regular manufacturing plant is way better for a community when it comes to employment, et cetera. But no one's saying no, and they're saying, it's national security, it's this, that, and the other thing, right? So everyone's saying yes to them, so they're coming in, but what I would like to see is a much more streamlined kind of zoning and placement for them to go where there's an existing headroom in the transmission system and in the distribution system instead of just where the cheap land is. That doesn't make any sense.
To that point, something that would be really beneficial to counties, planners, to businesses that are trying to, that already exist, forget the data centers. Because the PUC only recommends that the electricity service providers share their expansion plans, they don't do it. They won't do it, in fact. And I think even the state of Ohio, our neighbor, has, and plenty of PUCs in other states, require electricity service providers to indeed share that with their counties and with others. That would be enormously helpful to us if that word may would change to shall. And I know there'd be massive pushback from the industry and the utilities for that to happen probably, but it would be so helpful to us, not only whether the data centers are there or not, because then we can plan out and we can actually have some of that transparency that you talked about and be able to plan ahead a little bit, or at least know what our future is.
So we just got, last year, I think it was in the fall, we got a new duty assigned to us from the legislature. And it's that the commission is now responsible, and I think our first product delivery is this year, where we have to publish a forecast for all this new load that's coming in, and kind of like where and all that. So I think we're gonna start moving towards the kind of thing that you wanna see. I just don't know to what level of detail.
A level of detail would be very helpful. It should be that we can call PP&L and find out what their plans are for capacity when we have an industrial park.
I'm curious.
And
like you've been told no one.
Oh, for years.
Yeah.
For years, can't be shared. And so because of that word, may, instead of shall, they don't share. And none of our utilities will.
Like a security issue or
Oh, they claim that, but it's really what it is. It's a proprietary issue. You know, they say that they pretend that they're not in competition, but really they are. So they hold it close. Does anybody find that their electric utility will share the information about what their future capacity is? Yeah, it would be a really good thing. And hopefully it won't require legislation. Thank you.
Dave, or, I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to hear about on-site electric generation for data centers, and I was curious if you could speak to that. And did I hear you say you don't oversee electric generation?
Correct.
Just distribution?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess you wouldn't oversee that then, because
We don't oversee it. I went out last week to TMI, which is now called Crane Energy Center, because Microsoft is restarting the nuclear plant to supply their data center needs, right? And so there's different ways for this on-site. The Crane Energy Center / I can't get TMI out of my head. I gotta say it every time I say Crane, right? So the plan there is restart the nuclear plant, be up and running in 27, I think, and the plant's output will actually go into the PJM grid. It's gonna operate like a normal power plant. It's just that Microsoft has a contract for pricing on that almost a gig of power. So that's one way of data centers doing it. And I was actually happy to see that one because I'm a fan of nuclear power. So I was happy to see that come back. What I'm not a big fan of is the model for on-site that we have between Amazon Web Services and Susquehanna Nuclear, where they're contracting for half of the output of that power plant. But that power plant is up and running, still interjecting into the grid. So there's no additive power going into the grid, right? It's really just hijacking some that goes to the rest of your constituents. So that's another way of on-site. The best way to do it really is for these multi-billion-dollar companies to build their own power. Just bring your own, build it, got the money, we need the power, just do it. And, there are companies that are talking about that.
Go ahead, sir.